Hello and welcome back, dear viewer. This is Stuart Fields, and I am the host of Unleash the Leader Within, How to Follow Your Heart. Today, I happen to be interviewing and working with Jeremy Han. Ni hao,
你
Jeremy.
好，
Uh,
早安
and
Good
he
morning.
he's in Singapore, and let me just share a little bit about his background because this is just an amazing gentleman. Jeremy is the director of corporate strategy for Adam Koo Learning Technologies Group. His responsibility is the overall growth of the business through value creation across all business units. He is also the intrapreneur, meaning working inside of the company, driving the new business development of technology based businesses that will increase company scalability and valuation. Now, there's more. Jeremy is also a Gazelle's International Certified Business Advisor that works with executive teams across Asia and scaling their revenue and scaling their impact. His clients rate him a 9 out of 10 as a speaker and have seen business growth between 40 and 400% over 3 year timeframes. Now, he's going to share his personal mission, but I really like this, and that is to help 100 CEOs in 10 years to impact 100 million people. And there's so much more. Jeremy, thank you and welcome for joining us today.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share our story and also to engage with the audience. I think during this period of time with the crisis going on, we just need to come together, share stories, share experiences, and really help each other to get through this crisis, right? So
No,
thank you
that's
for giving me this opportunity. I'm glad to be here.
well, you're so welcome. And I feel connected to you already. And even as we were prepping for our interview today, Jeremy, you started sharing some slides. And I thought, how wonderful, because that's my approach. I guess the trainer in me comes out to the trainer in you. So, did you want to pull up some slides and maybe provide a little bit more of the
Yeah,
background of what you are and
sure.
what your company's about?
Yep, let's do that. Okay, so let me start off by giving a little bit of a background to who I am. So Stuart already mentioned that I'm a director of corporate strategy and I'm also a scaling up coach. And scaling up is actually based on this book called Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. And this is a book that actually helped more than 40,000 companies across the world to scale. And I'm also a certified coach of the system. But how does it all come together is really because our company went through a crisis. So we were one of those companies who grew too fast, and then we need to figure out what happened. But anyway, more of that story later. A little bit more about myself. I'm also an author. So these are a couple of books that I wrote. The first book I wrote is Winning the 21st Century Game, and it's really about asking myself this question: with these changes in the world, how do we play this game, right? Every game has got rules and the rules has changed in the 21st century. How do we play that? And the other book that I wrote is this book called Thrive. It's called Finding Your Unfair Advantage in an Unfair World. It's really about asking ourselves this question. There's so many things that can happen to anybody in the world. How do we stand out, right? Okay. So anyway, this is just a little bit of background about me. Now let me tell you about our company's story.
Sure.
So our company went through this huge setback, and I think that really shaped the way we are looking at the crisis today, this COVID-19 crisis that so many companies, so many of my clients are going through. Um, so in 2012, 2014, we really hit a point where we lost like 40% of our company people, revenue was crashing, we're losing money. Everything that we did no longer worked. It was tough. It was crazy. I remember I couldn't sleep every night because being in the executive team, we were trying to figure this out. We went through so much, but nothing seemed to work, right? It's like the saying, what got us here was not going to take us where we want to go. In fact, it's taking us down all the way to hell. But we turned the business around from 2015 to 2019. We turned the business around and we scaled our net profits 12 times.
So can I just
And
can I interrupt for a sec, Jeremy, because
please,
I'm going to keep interviewing you as we go and just
okay,
pause as questions arise. I hope you don't mind.
I don't mind.
So, here you talk about just I want to draw the parallel between what
Hmm.
people are now facing in this global pandemic that we
Yeah.
are against, and many, many countries are finding challenges economically,
Yeah.
and may not be coming back to jobs, or their companies might be failing at this point. I
Yeah.
The question that occurred to me is, you were able to turn that around. Will you be sharing what it was that you did to turn that around?
Yes, I will be
Okay,
sharing part of it, and
great.
also how that would relate to a personal career point of view.
Perfect, perfect. I love it. I just wanted to make that parallel. I'll put you
Sure.
on pause for a minute because you were going way too fast for me. I wanted to,
I'm sorry about that,
no,
Stuart.
no, that's okay. That it just shows what an innovative thinker you are. Yeah, and
Okay.
I also, would have liked to explore your books a little bit more in detail, but that's fine. Continue on.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No worries, no worries. Yeah. So anyway, like what Stuart asked the question, right, is that, so how does this relate to what we're going to be talking about today? It actually relates in a very, very personal way, because if this company dies, it just means that I'm going to lose my job, right?
Right,
And
right.
that's simply what happens, what is happening today, right? So many people are just going to lose their jobs because companies are dying.
Yeah.
And the key question to a business owner, if you're a business owner listening in today, I hope this message is really for you, because we turn the business around, which means that we save the jobs of a lot of people, including our own, right? So it is really about a whole story of what can we do, what have we learned, and really about getting ourselves out of this crisis, right? And I think the key thing we learn is how to learn ourselves out of a crisis. I think that's really the keys.
Mm. So learn ourselves out of the crisis. Did I hear you correctly?
That's right.
I love it. I love it. Boy, I am so happy that we connected here, Jeremy, because
Right.
this is really what the crux of the focus of this summit is all about. The title "Unleash the Leader Within" doesn't just apply to leaders. My belief is that everyone has leadership inside of us,
Yeah.
and the question is, how are we leading ourselves now, given the greater environment around us? And Stephen Covey
Yes.
wrote this book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. In there, he talked about our circle of influence and our circle of concern. And we might
Yes.
be concerned about the environment outside of us, but what we're also doing is focusing all of our attention there, as opposed to what can we actually influence, or what is within our control.
Right.
and
That's
and
right.
and what you're saying is, what is within our control is the ability to learn, and we can learn ourselves
Yes.
through the crisis.
That's right.
I
That's
love
right.
it. I love
Yeah.
it. What a great
Exactly.
concept. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really about learning your way out of a crisis, because every crisis presents us with an opportunity. And I think one of the things that we learned um, as part of the crisis, and I mentioned earlier on about this whole thing about being a scaling up coach. And we all know that coaching is really about asking the right questions, right?
Right.
Not finding the right answers, but really asking the right questions. And I think in every crisis, the point is it creates a new set of questions that we have to discover. And the key is really not finding the right answer straight away, because so often we get the right answers to the wrong questions, but to ask ourselves with this crisis, what are the new questions that we have to ask? And if we can uncover that set of new questions, then we would be on the right track to learning ourselves out of the crisis.
I love it. I love it. And it just occurred to me that your background is, even though you're in Singapore, but your family history hails from China, correct? And is so that is that Mandarin or Cantonese? I think it was Mandarin, isn't it?
It's both, actually.
It both? Awesome. No, I love. I wasn't aware, but there is a Chinese character for crisis, and doesn't
Yeah,
that, I'm putting you on the spot here, but I don't know if you can pull up an example. But isn't that character written to include both danger and opportunity?
that's right. Exactly, you're right. And it really reflects, I think, the thinking of people back in the ancient times,
Mhm.
right? And in fact, today this is very much talked about when I relate to my clients in the Chinese speaking world. And that is really the word crisis is made up of the word danger and opportunity,
Mm.
right? So in every um, danger or in every crisis, it basically changes the status quo. And when the status quo changes, it just means that new opportunities are created and new and former opportunities are gone, right? So it really depends on which set of questions do you want to ask. Like
Yes.
you can ask yourself this question: how is this going to kill me? Or you can ask the question: what is it going to teach me? Or what is it really showing me? Or what do I need to figure out to get through this? Right. So it's really, I think, it's really about asking the right questions. And I think one of the key questions we learned, or at least I learned in the crisis, is not when we run a business, for example, it's really, or even in your career progression, it's really not what should I do next, but should be what value can I create out of this crisis. Is there somebody who need a new value proposition that I could create? So I think that's something that really reframes our way of thinking, and it's tied to exactly your question of crisis and opportunity. Every crisis creates opportunity for us to create value for somebody. So we got to find that equation.
So I'm going to take it just a level deeper, right? So I love where we're going with this, but there's another Chinese character that I use in some of my programs, and that is Ting, which is listening, and it's where you listen with, I think it's 10 eyes, and the heart is king, right? So it's not only asking the questions, but it's our ability to listen to the responses. If we're asking others around us for feedback, we need to accept that feedback and listen openly,
Yeah,
and consider with a lot of observing, because Ting is how it translates in
yeah,
English. But Ting is another Chinese character that I really like to use, and showing that listening is more than just listening with the ears,
yeah,
because you're listening with the ears, the eyes, and relative to my summit, you're
yeah.
listening to your heart and learning how to follow your heart, and that really
Right,
brings in that heart brain connection as well.
right, right. I think that's very interesting, connecting it to the heart, because I think the other thing about a crisis is that it really challenges you to relook at what's important, right?
Yes,
Because I think if you
absolutely.
come back to a core set of motivations and say, hey, this is what is really important, and that ties to the question of value creation. You can't create genuine value for anybody unless you really believe in what you're doing, right? So businesses or individuals who are facing this crisis need to ask themselves, so why am I doing this? Why am I doing this set of things that will take me through this crisis? Because if you can't find that conviction, then you either say, I'm going to give up, I'm going to do something else. And I think this is very critical for business owners, because you are leading a bunch of people that depend on you. If you give up, that's the end for those guys, right? So you need to be clear, and that clarity has to come from the heart, and that clarity is redefines itself with every crisis, because every crisis comes up with a new set of questions on how am I going to live out that purpose, how am I going to live out that conviction, right? And then you got to find that new set of answers.
Oh, I love it. Very powerful information. The viewers must be absolutely loving what you're sharing now, Jeremy. And thank
I
you so
hope
much
so.
for. Yeah, no, this is great. On your personal journey as you were building your career, you're talking about some company setbacks, but right now we also have many people facing personal crisis at home.
Yeah,
Right, their livelihoods are affected. Their health is in question. They're not able to go about their daily routine. I'm even
yep,
thinking about my older brother, that his lifestyle was completely disrupted because he would go to the YMCA on a regular basis, and when they closed it,
uh-huh.
he was left without his
Oh my
routine,
God.
which was so
Wow.
important to his life, his health, and everything else. But
Right.
now it's beginning to come back a little bit. People that haven't faced hardships before maybe haven't crossed over the barrier of the comfort zone. And really, all learnings, we're talking about learning here as well, but is occurring just outside of your comfort zone. And this is really like a growth or a performance zone. So, one,
Right.
you turn the company around, but did you have personal hardships along your career journey? And if you don't mind sharing, what might they be?
Yeah, sure. Of course, I think everybody faces hardships. I mean, it's just whether we want to own up to it or not. We want to
That-
admit it or not, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and I think, of course, during that period of time, I mean, there are many, many hardships, but I think I want to keep it to a context that we have already set, and that is really, um, if that if anything happens to the company, we're all going to lose our jobs. I mean, we took massive
Right.
pay cuts
Yeah.
then, right? And of course, when you take massive pay cuts, you got kids, you got family, it just affects everybody, right? It's just everything just kind of like freezes. It's
Hmm.
bad, and then you can't sleep, and then you just worry about things. Um, I think when I face a setback, there are a couple of things that helped me to understand or to figure that out. And
Hmm.
that is really, I mean, it really depends on what kind of setback, but I think there is a core, right? And that core ultimately goes back to really our core purpose, the purpose, right? Why you exist. Because why you exist cascades into both professional and personal life, right? How it defines who you are as a businessman, defines who you are as a father, it defines who you are as a friend.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
think that fundamental understanding of core purpose is so important because it helps you again to re-clarify those questions. If the crisis is personal or if the crisis is professional, it still comes back to, okay, why am I doing this? Or if this is who I am, then how should I react?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because I think if you don't have that, you don't have an anchor, you don't have a base, then anything goes. Right? Today I can be this, tomorrow I can be that. Finally, who are you? I mean, there's no absolute
Yeah.
for you to work on. So I think if I were to relate back, because that crisis that our company went through is both professional and personal, because it
Mhm.
kind of like flows downward, right? And affects everybody. We were companies doing bad financially, you will be doing badly financially, right? And with that comes family problems, arguments, all that sort of thing. But I think having that clear sense of core purpose really helped.
Mm.
And you mentioned a little bit about my goal, which is to help 100 CEOs to help make an impact for 100 million people. It didn't come like suddenly and like I had this brilliant insight. That's what I'm going to do. It's true that crisis is just kind of clarifies why am I in this business,
Right.
right? And if I were to fight my way out of this crisis, for what? Right? It has to be something bigger than money. And the reason has to be bigger than money because you can make money anywhere. But that's the problem with a lot of people. They just jump from job to job without actually finding themselves. And I
Mhm.
think if you can never find yourself, then you'll never be the best that you can be.
Oh, I love it. Really, really well said. Thank you so much. And I think that you've actually created some more slides. My line of questioning here is just to draw out what are some of the things that you did when you encountered roadblocks to turn them more into
Yeah,
stepping stones. And it sounds like you were just based on your philosophy. You went back to what is your core purpose. You were listening to your inner guidance. You
yeah,
turned inside of yourself, and that helped you define your goal, your major mission right now, which is that
yeah,
100 CEOs. And behind that is helping kids out of poverty. There's so much. It's not just the thought of helping the CEOs, but it's who they can help, and then through their business success, they can lift up poverty around them and help them with
exactly.
schooling and health and every so many different areas. So
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you for that. That's really a go-giver mentality. So do you actually created a slide that kind of walked us through this a little bit, and I would like to give you
yep.
that opportunity to share again.
Okay. So I think when we went through that whole experience, there are three things that I think is very important. I think the first is really that our mindsets have to change. And that's really like what we were talking about. We have to really ask those hard questions. What is this crisis really saying to me? And that forces us to change the way we look at things.
Hmm.
And when we have a change in mindset, it has to lead to a change in strategy. That means we have to look at our game plan, right? Whether is it a business game plan or is it a personal career, personal development game plan, it has to change, right? It has to change in a sense that we just no longer can do things the way we used to do. And lastly, it led us to change habits. During that time when we went through the crisis 2014 until today, I
Hmm.
changed some of my personal habits, and one of that includes waking up early in the morning to work out, because actually I'm not the morning person. I hate waking up. I still hate waking up to exercise, but I
Does that
drag
mean
myself out. But
does
sorry,
that mean you are waking up now early, and even though you don't like it, is that a habit that you've changed, or is that something that you?
it is a habit that I've changed. I've never been a morning person, but now I wake up to pray, and then I wake up to work out before I start my working day.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
Huge,
Thanks for sharing
it's
that.
a huge change in personality for me. But it's really the power of habits, because I think you can't really change a business unless you change yourself, right? I mean, it's really
Hmm.
a reflection. How you run your career, how what kind of a person you are in your office, in your company, in your practice. It's a reflection of who you really are. So I think that's really a reflection of habits. And I can't imagine a person, or in fact, I've never seen a successful person who does not have a successful set of habits. So I think that's very important. But what I really want to share is this next slide.
Hmm.
And it comes back to this question that you talk about the core purpose, listening to your core purpose, listening to your heart, and listening to your soul, your very essence of who you are. And the other thing is that I think we need to identify is really our core competencies, because the core competencies allow us to manifest our core purpose.
Hmm.
And one very interesting thing that happened to me along my career is that people often tell me that I could teach complex things and make it simple. And I never really thought of that as a core competency, because I started my career actually as a teacher, as a school teacher. And I often got comments from kids, from colleagues, from parents, and said, hey, my child said you taught taught him something in 2 hours, what another teacher would have taken 2 years. I'm like, what? Like, what that's supposed to mean, right? We're all the same. I kept
Sure.
thinking that we're all teachers, we're all equally qualified, we all have the same degree. So how can that be possible? But but that was because I did not realize that qualifications and core competencies are totally different. Core competencies are really the unfair advantage that God had given to you, or you were born with,
Hmm.
and that's what makes you unique, and that will allow you to be the best. So I just, when I figured that out, I realized, hey, if I could help kids to understand simple, take complex concepts and make it easy for them, then what about moving up the value chain? Early on I talked about value creation. If I
Right.
could move up the value chain, and that is if I could take complex business situations and make it simple for CEOs and their management team, then I have scaled up my own personal value. I've scaled up the impact that I could have made. And that would translate into much better career prospects for myself, right? Because the value of my work has increased, the economic value as well as the impact that we talk about. So I think that core competencies is really so important, but so many people build their careers on qualifications, but never on their core competencies. Because I'm sure we've all heard of stories of like engineers, two engineers doing the same job. One invents something great, the other one, he just makes sure the machine does not break down, right?
Right. Right.
But it is really about core competencies. And lastly is the core customer. Who do you really want to serve? Who do you want to create value for? And that comes back again to the question of career and career setbacks or crisis. It's really that new question. When this crisis happens, who's going to be that new customer? Who is this new person that I can serve with my core competencies and aligned to my core purpose? And why I put career and strategy in the middle of the triangle is really, when you have these three things, you would be very clear how your career is going to progress. You're going to be very clear what your business is going to do. And any of these three things is missing, it's like there's no anchor to that triangle, and then anything goes.
Oh, beautiful. And I just want to relate this to the individual as well, because when we think about if you just pull that back up again for a sec,
Okay.
Jeremy, you know, um, is we look at your triangle here in the middle, you've got career and business strategy. An individual can decide that is they look at their core customer is potentially being the employer that they're going after. And if they understand their core competencies and their core purpose, it'll make it much easier to align as an individual with their choice of careers. Too many people may have been in their just in their careers working only towards a paycheck and ultimately retirement, but not getting the fulfillment that maybe with a little bit of self-examination they might have found a much happier way of being, of living, and of contributing to society and themselves and their families. So this applies also to the individual, not just the business. I just wanted to share that. So
Absolutely. In fact, in my book, I talk about this question that actually we are all CEOs.
yes,
We
yeah.
are CEOs of our career, right? If we think of our career as a business, then it's exactly like what you said. Our employers
Mm-hmm.
are our biggest clients, right? And I remember one advice given to me when I started my very first career as a teacher, as a fresh graduate.
Mm-hmm.
I got this advice from an old priest. And this old priest, he said, there's only one thing you need to remember if you want to be successful in your career. Right. And he said this, he said, you need to understand that bosses like to be managed. Bosses don't like to manage you because they're so busy. Right. And I made it a point to manage my boss because, like what you have just said, she is my biggest customer. I need to make
Yes.
sure she knows exactly what I'm doing. She needs to see that what I'm doing adds value to what she needs to do. It's all about creating value for somebody, right? And when I understood that, I made sure that she never have to come to me and ask me what's going on, right? And my colleagues always ask me and say, how come the boss is always chasing us but the boss is never chasing you? And I never really thought about that in that sense back then. But now I've figured what the priest was really trying to say. And that is, the boss is my customer. And I got to keep adding value. I've got to align my value creation to her value creation so that she creates value for her boss, right? And that value chain is created, and people, and that way people will recognize. And I say this a lot to people because I give a lot of talks
Mm-hmm.
to organizations that help retrench people actually. And I always say that your company can either look at you as a cost or an asset, an expense or an asset. And in a crisis, people fire expenses because they want to cut costs, but people do not fire assets because assets create value. Cost or expense take up space, right? So if we position our career as, I'm just here to take a paycheck and I'll give you this number of hours, I'll give you this amount of work for this amount of money, you can be replaced. But if you are there and you say that I can create 3 times the value, 5 times the value of the next guy, right? And you are an asset, and no sensible boss fires an asset,
Yeah, no,
right?
I love it. There's a well way to reframe that as well. And as you were sharing, just something I like to share in my leadership and high performance team classes is that when you go to a manager with a problem, you had better go with two solutions as well, because that's
Yes,
making yourself valuable. You don't just go with a
that's
problem
right.
expecting them to solve it. You solve it
Yeah,
for them, and that
that's
makes
right.
their job easier, and that makes you more valuable as that asset. So,
Yeah.
great.
So one of the things I used to do when I was starting out my career is to make sure I understand 2 or 3 things that's in my boss's KPI. And I make sure I've got 1 or 2 projects out of the many projects I've got to do
Let's
that has,
pause for just 1 minute though, right? And
yeah,
I don't know that all of the viewers will understand what a KPI is.
right.
So just to clarify, you know, that this is I know what it is, but maybe you can clarify that it's a key performance indicator and
Key
what that
performance
means. Yeah.
indicator, a key result that they have to deliver,
Yeah.
right? So
Perfect.
I
Perfect.
make sure my key results for a few of these projects is a direct alignment to the key results that she has to create. So that's a very clear link that she can see, why is this guy valuable to me?
Yeah, no, I love it. That's great. That's great. I'm looking at the time and just realizing that this time has gone so quickly, Jeremy. And
Really?
and right now, I would maybe like to bring it back to maybe one or two key takeaways for our viewers, something that they can find value in, that will help them in this environment. Is there something that you would like to share that would be a big aha moment for our viewers, and then maybe close with I know that you've got a wonderful gift offering as well, so
Yeah. Okay. So let me come back to the screen and I want to just go to this, which is really the key takeaways.
Right.
And that is really, have we learned something about this crisis that changed our mindset or our paradigm? And that is what I want to link back earlier to the power of asking the right questions. And has the crisis uncovered a new set of questions for you? Or have you asked yourself a new set of questions considering this crisis? It is really about looking at this crisis from a different angle or from a
Yes.
different perspective. And that's really what we mean by a change in mindset or paradigm. You just cannot approach what's happening today with what worked in the future. And has those set of questions help you to discover something that will allow you to change your strategy or your game plan? Well, maybe we're jumping the gun a little bit here because I'm assuming you already have a strategy. But a lot of people don't have game plans for their life, don't have game
Right.
plans for their careers. So maybe it's time to start working on a game plan, right? And that game plan is really from those three things that I've mentioned. What's really your core purpose? Who are you, right? What are you good at? What are you innately better at than other people?
Mm-hmm.
And one clue is that what has people constantly been telling you throughout your career that you are good at? That it's not something you could learn in school, but you are just
Sure.
good at, right?
Sure.
And third is really who's really your customer. Who do you really want to create value for? And the last one is really you need to change habits, right? Because results don't come on their own, they come as a result of changing habits. So
Yeah.
I hope that kind of like brings it down to a landing that yes, finally we can learn and learn and learn, but it has to lead to a fundamental change
Yeah.
in who we are and how we do things in this crisis.
Yeah, it's the transfer of learning. Just going to a fun event is great, but unless you walk away with a skill change and can apply that on a regular
Yeah.
basis, then that investment wasn't worth the company investing in you. So
Yes.
yeah. So how would people get in touch with you, Jeremy, if they
Okay.
wanted to? And I know that we will link your gift information to your speakers page, but maybe you want to share a little bit of what that is.
Sure. Yes. So we talked about habits. So I'm going to share this gift. It's what we call the Rockefeller Habits Checklist. It comes from this book, Scaling Up, actually.
Mhm.
And it's really one of those things that I work with clients. Essentially, it is a list of what we believe are habits that a company should have if you want to scale. So if you're a business owner or if you work for a company, because not just bosses need this, right?
Mhm.
If you are in some kind of a management position or you're just in any organization and you want to say, hey, how do I make this organization a little bit more healthier, right?
Mhm.
This is a great checklist that would help you, right? So get in touch with me. If you want this, it's free, it's a free resource that I think would be really, really great because it
Perfect.
breaks down for you the 10 habits that every organization should have. So whether you're a business owner or a boss in some capacity, or as long as you're in any organization, look at this and say, what are 2 or 3 things that you can start working on that will add value for your organization?
Oh,
And that
that's
is along that will help you get on the way of becoming an asset rather than an expense. So
that's
this is
great.
my
Thank
contact
you.
information. Stuart, you were asking me how people can get in touch with me.
Mhm.
That's my email, and that's my LinkedIn. And I have a YouTube channel where there are lots of videos for companies who want to answer this question of how you could survive this crisis. It's all there, and I hope it's of useful to people.
Jeremy, thank you so much. And we will link that. I believe you've got a PDF download of that that habit checklist.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
So we'll provide that link on your speakers page. So any viewer that would like to go back to the speakers page, that'll be available there for them to see and to download. So
Sure.
Jeremy, thank you. So it's been time just evaporated. It went so quickly. I really truly enjoyed interviewing you and getting to know you better and also a lot of what you've done. So I guess I'm going to offer you a sheshe. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much as we move through into this whole new or next world and look at doing things differently and changing our paradigm. So,
Yeah, sure.
Jeremy, thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.